Hello and welcome to Life Edge, because life just doesn't have to be that mediocre. So today we have here our lovely co-host, Dr. Susan Nash. Hi, Susan.
Hi, it's nice to be here.
And for our featured guest, we have Dr. Andrew Kinkella on again. We had him about 2 months ago, but we just had such a great time talking to him that we had to have him on again. So let's run our intro and we'll learn a little bit more about Andrew. And we're back, and here's Andrew.
Hello.
How you doing?
Doing pretty good, pretty good.
Yeah, so last time we talked a lot about how you got into archaeology in general, and
Right.
I thought it would be kind of interesting to learn a little bit more about your research, specifically. Andrew is a Mayan archaeologist, and he goes in the summers. He studies cenotes in Belize, and I just kind of wanted to know, you've been on this project for a long time, and it's been running since before you got into archaeology, right?
Yes.
And what are what are you trying to uncover about the Maya?
Right. Okay.
And,
Sure. For my own research, I work in the cenotes of Belize, and cenotes are basically pools of water, right? And I think we talked some about that last time. There are these natural pools that form when the geology itself, the limestone breaks down. And there's a bunch of these in the Maya world, and when you see them in person, they look like little lakes. I was really fortunate to work on these cenotes because I just happen to have a diving background, and I kind of brought that with me into archaeology. I didn't start diving because of the cenotes or anything like that. The situation just kind of very luckily presented itself. So it was something that made me a little different than everyone else. You know, I had this kind of second skill set, and I would recommend anyone who's in academics or really in most jobs, if you have a second skill set that you can somehow bring in to your main skill set, it really pays dividends. And it really did in my case, because what I could do, we had these cenotes in our survey area, 25 of them, and then I could just go safely and dive into these looking for Maya artifacts and relating the cenotes to the larger pyramids and that kind of thing. So I was very fortunate to have this skill set that I could draw on right away. And studying the cenotes, it's also something that I think the public is really into, and National Geographic likes stuff like that. And so I started this project in 1997. That was the first year that I did any sort of swimming or anything. You had to walk out to the cenotes, which are 8 miles away from anything in the jungle. And then since 97, every year it sort of built. And then in, I would say, the early 2000 teens, the project got really big, and it's gotten to a point where even though I was the first guy to work on this stuff, I'm now just kind of one of lots of people who work there, and it's funny for me to walk around the cenote sometimes and see other researchers there, and sometimes they might not know that I was kind of like the first guy. I'm just sort of there with other crew members, and that's funny, and sometimes I'll hear things about somebody else will say, "Oh, did you hear about this guy who did this with the cenotes?" I'm like, "Yes, I have. That was me." So that's it's one of my great joys in archaeology. Is working on this project.
Yeah, the master of cenotes, right?
Sorta.
Well, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Okay, so one of the things that really fascinates me, especially with my geological background and the fact that I visited some cenotes at the formative age of 16.
Right.
So they really imprinted me. But what exactly did the Mayans use them for? I mean, were they just water sources and then ritual things, or did they have other uses?
Luckily, the answer is yes. to everything you said, and it kind of it depends on the cenote. I mean, we don't want to go too far and be like every puddle of water in the Maya world is, a sacrificial zone full of ritual or something like that. But some of them definitely are. And part of my research was being very honest about it and divvying them up as I would explore different ones. Certain ones were obviously ritual related, and when I say ritual related, I mean the Maya were actually there throwing offerings into the cenotes to the rain gods. A lot of this stuff is ultimately for the Maya. It's ultimately about corn. I mean, my big joke for my undergraduate classes is like, when in doubt, just guess corn, right? Because that's what the answer always is. So for the Maya, they would throw artifacts into the cenotes with the idea that the gods would then, through the cenotes, bring rain onto the crops and the corn would grow. So there are certain spots that have certain cenotes that have a lot of evidence that they did that, and other ones that don't. And it's okay that sometimes cenotes, like you were saying, sometimes they were just for water or were just to water crops. But when in doubt, there's a lot of ritual kind of vibe to them, if that makes sense, because they are a portal to the other world. Cenotes are. So when in doubt, it's pretty easy to find ritual aspects to them if you look a little bit.
What kind of evidence is like, what kind of artifacts do you find in the cenotes?
Okay. Well, the one that gets all the press is human bodies. On our project, we've never found human remains or anything like that. But a big question people have is, did the Maya ever practice human sacrifice to the cenotes? And the answer is yes. It's not every week, it's not every month, but at certain very special times they would do this. So other cenotes in the Maya realm, yes, they found human remains in there. And when the Spanish originally came to the Maya world, they recorded cenote rituals where they did sacrifice people into the cenotes. So that's kind of the big thing. But after that, you also have all different kinds of artifacts, all different kinds of like stone tools or pottery or precious things that the Maya, or jade or something like that the Maya might throw in there. The idea is you gotta sacrifice. It's high stakes. So you gotta throw something good to get something good.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So like in the Mayans, I mean, believed at this point that they were formed of blood of the gods plus corn, right? And so, what were some of the implications of some of their creation myths? Can you see any of those implications in their culture?
Whew. It's a big one. That sort of encompasses their sort of core belief system. As I said before, and I don't even say this as a joke, it really is all about corn, right? Corn is the basis of their culture and of their society. So when you kind of peel back and look at the religion, one of the main gods is the corn god, and so you want the corn god to give to you, so you will have a bountiful harvest of corn. Their creation mythology is all about corn. Underneath it all, it's the growth and death and rebirth of corn. So that's where all this wraps up. And so corn is the big thing. And then with the cenotes, you have more of a water aspect to it. So you need the rain to bring the corn. And there's also a cycle, like a rain cycle that goes into this. In Maya belief, water actually would come out of caves as steam. If you've ever been in a cave, it's really kind of wet and steamy. And so the water would come out of the cave, go up into the sky, and then cycle back down as rain, back into the mountain, down into the cave, and out again. That was the Maya rain cycle. And their sacrifices would kind of help that along.
Well, so I guess one of their gods was Kukulkan, where we get the word hurricane.
Which, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Was it Kukulkan?
Kukulkan?
No, Kukulkan, like not Kukulkan. Or maybe that was an Aztec god. But they had one that's like, it looks like the word hurricane came from it. Is that their major storm god?
That's in my experience, the Maya gods are a little tougher than sometimes than the ones like Egypt gods. To me, are pretty straightforward, right? They're pretty easy. So, okay, Osiris does this. Okay, Horus does this. For the Maya gods, a lot of times they'll have kind of a core thing they do, and then they'll have kind of second and third aspects of themselves, like other things that they do too. And sometimes they'll kind of share something with one of the other gods. So, off the top of my head, I can't think of which god you're referring to. And also, to make it even tougher still, the Aztec gods are very similar to the Maya gods because they're all in the Mesoamerican world. So, for an example, the Maya rain god Chak, in Aztec, it's Tlaloc, and it's the same guy. So, but they did have, I forget which god it is, but one god does have an aspect of storms to them. Storms are a bad thing. Rain is nice, but storms are bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't remember either. So if you were to quiz me on that right now, I think I would fail.
Oh, no. I've failed as a professor, obviously.
If your students watch this, oh man. Yeah, oh man, but so much good stuff like the hero twins.
Oh, yeah.
Oh gosh.
It's great. Yeah. I was just watching Joseph Campbell, Power of Myth, the other day, and so much of it is just so interesting when you look at like Maya mythology, and you can compare it to other mythologies of the world, and what we as human beings think are the deepest aspects of what being a human is. It's really interesting stuff.
Was Quetzalcoatl number one in their god on like the god hierarchy?
I knew this one was coming. Quetzalcoatl comes later. So, like with the Egyptians, the Maya are around for a long time. So, if you're talking about classic Maya society, they don't really do Quetzalcoatl. And Quetzalcoatl is the Plumed Serpent. So, when the Maya were at their height, they didn't do Quetzalcoatl, but in the post-classic, which is after the Maya collapse. The Maya collapse happens around 900 AD or so. In the post-classic, then Quetzalcoatl is a big deal. So he's kind of a later manifestation, and you can kind of pick and choose some aspects of some of the earlier gods that make Quetzalcoatl the Plumed Serpent. So he's a big deal in the post-classic.
Well, everybody wonders, why did the Mayans collapse?
I think this will come as all of a sudden no shock to all of us. There's a big list of things that happened all about the same time, which is the Terminal Classic period, around 800 to 900 AD. They destroyed their environment. They had poor rulership, and they had drought. Man, what does that remind you of? Poor rulership, drought, and environmental degradation. I don't know. You see? The Maya are shouting at us from 900 AD saying, don't do what we're doing. But we're doing it, and it's very unfortunate. Oh, and I will say we have good archaeological data for that stuff, too, in the 800 to 900 AD realm. Like, there's really good evidence that there were indeed some really serious droughts at the time. And some of they had a lot of warfare, too, at the time. So that's the sort of the fourth thing. So all that stuff coming together, you're not going to be able to keep growing enough corn, and everything kind of falls apart.
From class that you said that was in the classic period, right? Tikal, and what was the other major city?
Calakmul. Calakmul's the one that everyone forgets. They had two sort of super states where Tikal was on one side, Calakmul was on the other, and then everyone else kind of picked a side. But the Maya never became an empire. One side never won. So there was never one guy who was like emperor of it all. They were just a group of city-states that never truly organized. They got close, and that aspect of it might be a major portion of what kind of did them in.
What do you think about their writing?
The hieroglyphics are really complex, and they kind of hit all the bases. Not only can you say all kinds of things with the hieroglyphics, but they also have kind of an aesthetic beauty to them. They're very dense. I mean, it's obvious what team I'm on, but in comparing to the Egypt stuff, I think the Mayan hieroglyphics are much more difficult, much more dense, much more tough to read, but really pretty in what they do. The Mayan numbering system is really neat. It's on base 20, so it's not what we're used to. But when I show my students how to make really big numbers in base 20, it's actually really easy. And some students who have trouble with regular math find that the Maya numbering system is really easy and works really well for them. I always find that really interesting. So their numbering system is really straightforward and works really well. And their hieroglyphics, they talk about all sorts of different things. One thing that we really want to appreciate is that the Maya wrote their own history. We don't need, as archaeologists, we don't need to. We'd need to write history, but the ancient Maya have already helped us out by having stuff already written down. And of course, a lot of it is very propaganda-ish in its vibe, just like every other state-level society on Earth. But they have really good histories of, like, this king came, and then this guy became king, and then there's this queen, and then this happened, and then there was this warfare with this city at this time. It's really, really dense, and there's all kinds of good stuff there. And my other favorite part about Mayan hieroglyphics is sometimes they talk about the really basic things of life, really human things. Like, they'll write things on a pot that says, like, this pot is for chocolate. And that's, like, just a really nice everyday thing. Not everything in our everyday world is all about gods and battles and fighting and stuff. Some of it's just like, oh, hey, have you seen Mom's chocolate pot? Oh, there it is. So I like that about the hieroglyphics. And there's lots of them.
Yeah. And the other big thing is the astronomy, right?
Oh, sure.
The really advanced in astronomy.
Yeah, they have all kinds of. I mean, the Maya were really good again at math, which kind of relates into the astronomical world. They watched their night sky closely. They, along with the concept of zero in math, they could predict solar eclipses, and they were really good with astronomy, and they had certain constellations too. We think that the constellation Scorpio that we have, Scorpio the Scorpion, they also saw as a scorpion.
Wow.
Yeah, constellations are tough, of course, because you don't have too much evidence, but there's a little bit, and if you know the night sky, I'm sort of a closet astronomer. I like the constellations and stuff. If you look at Scorpio, it really looks like a scorpion. I mean, it really looks like something. We all know there's other constellations that don't look like much. Like, I'm a Pisces, and I gotta say, Pisces in the night sky doesn't look like anything. It's like the lamest of constellations. But Scorpio is really bright and really obvious. So I think it wouldn't shock me if the Maya really saw a scorpion there. And there were other ones. They have like
It's a 3-heart stone.
The 3-heart stone. Oh, the 3-heart stone. The Maya have this idea of centrality that is sometimes symbolized by 3 hearth stones. And what that means is you need 3 stones to hold the hearth up for a fire. And every household would just have 3 simple stones that would, and they'd have, like a ceramic plate on top. And that's how you could make tortillas, And Maya households today, you'll say the 3 stones in the hearth. But you can't go too far. So you can go to the point where every time you see something that's 3, you're like, 3 heartstone symbolism. You're like, well, no, that's just 3 stones, man. But in the night sky, Orion's belt has 3 very obvious stars, right, in the Orion's belt. And you could go with, maybe that's symbolic in the night sky of centrality of the 3 hearthstone. Orion is also seen as a turtle in the Maya cosmos, and if you look at it, you would see it as a turtle with really long legs coming out. But it works.
Well, here's a big question. Okay, so I had the opportunity to visit a waka in Lima, and it was kind of near the coast, and it was eventually taken over by the Incas, but at first there were people that just lived on the coast.
Mm-hmm.
And they had big pots. Mm-hmm. And in the pots, they said that they would put stuff in them, and then, like, on celebrations, they would smash the pots. Mm-hmm. And I thought, that sounds like piñatas. But I didn't know, like, Mayas had pots that they smashed with stuff in them.
They did. But it's so much more. And so I don't think it's a piñata situation. It's hard to say. This is archaeologists happened a long time ago. And we do have to remember that the Inca situation, which is going to be in South America, might be different than the Maya thing, which is in Central America.
Oh, yeah.
But the Maya, you can definitely say they would ritually kill their pots, like their pottery and stuff. Like, they will break them. Like if they put pottery in with a burial, they'll break the pottery so that the pot is now dead and will follow the dead person to the other world. right? So you have to
Wow.
kill it. The same thing they would do with their houses too. When the house is finally ready to move out, or they have to rebuild it or whatever, they will ritually kind of burn or break down their house to kind of kill the house. In the Maya world, I think that they saw the world as much more animated than we do, much more kind of
Well,
alive. Even like with caves and mountains and all of this, the world as alive.
well, I read some poetry from like recent Mayan writers, and they had this total animistic view and incantations, and they would say, "Broom, help me sweep," and I
Oh,
thought of Fantasia, and I thought maybe that was the Mayan world, that they believed like they could just say things and like the broom would help them sweep, or please help me do this.
I think
Anyway,
that sounds. I mean, we have to remember that there's still like 8 million Maya out there, and that they still speak Mayan, and they didn't. Even though there's like sort of a classic period collapse where they don't build big buildings anymore, and then when the Spanish come, there's all that disruption from the Spanish. The Maya still endure. The Maya are still around, so they still have a very active culture, and that kind of thing sounds to me very Mayan, And it's the idea, not. It's the idea that of sort of like souls and everything, or the natural world as kind of alive and interactive. It's hard for me to explain because we don't do that in our culture. We're very divorced, from the natural world.
I'm pretty sure I talked to my printer and scanner, like, can you please work right now?
No, but I love that example because we do that. We as human beings, like, it's much more natural to interact with these kind of things as if they had souls or feelings or this kind of. You do it with your car. I mean, how many of us? I mean, have you never yelled at your car or yelled at your car and then said you were sorry? We've all done it, like that's just an aspect of us as human beings, and I think the Maya just did that much more kind of in their everyday lives and just as they would talk about things. We do it and then we kind of joke it away, and we're almost sort of embarrassed that we do it. But
but they make a poem about it.
Sure,
and that's very nice.
Yeah, and it makes sense, and it makes a more dynamic poem. I'm not going to make a poem that just says, "Hey, there's my broom. There it is, sitting there." That poem's not that great.
Well, it was really fascinating, and so the woman who wrote it, she wrote it in she was translating traditional Mayan incantations from people that she was working with, and then she translated them to Spanish, and they were really interesting.
Sure. And I mean, a lot of the modern Maya today too will of course speak Spanish or and they obviously don't write hieroglyphics anymore, but they'll write they'll use our regular alphabet to write the Mayan language out. So there is a bit of a mix, of course, of the cultures.
Are you fluent in the Mayan language?
No, I know some words, and there are certain hieroglyphics that I can recognize. I can do the numbers pretty well. Like I know how to do those, and I can if they're written, I know what it is. But if you gave me just a slab of Maya hieroglyphics, I could just point out a couple things. I couldn't just read it. That's really tough and takes a lot of time. It's like learning a foreign language from scratch.
Yeah. Are there must be some specialists that could do that?
Oh,
or
yeah.
Not really.
Oh yeah, no. There's always. It's funny in grad school. There's always the one person. Like the one person. Oh, take it to her. Oh yeah, she's the epigrapher. There's always one person who kind of doubles down in that world and will actually learn how to read it. For the rest of us, it's just it's something that'll just take too long.
That's interesting. Well, so in all of this, like, world of finding different texts and things, they found so much using LiDAR with all this undiscovered temples and things. Do you think that they're going to find, I know I've asked this before, but like, what do you think they'll find? Do they find anything different in terms of like knowledge and history, in terms of the stela and the carvings?
There's always more. There's always more. Like if you go online, it's not hard to find. There's big researchers out there who have their own blogs on kind of this week's new Mayan hieroglyphics that's found. I would say that we can read even the hieroglyphics that have already been found, we can read like 85%, give or take. So there's still aspects of some that are difficult for us to read. Just the more actual panels that are found, the better. Because then you see the hieroglyphics in context, and certain ones you might have seen before, but you didn't know. You're like, oh, okay, that means this kind of plant. So that stuff is always moving forward. David Stewart is a famous Maya epigrapher, and he has a blog that he keeps up very regularly, and it's really great, and he's very good at translating this stuff. So with LiDAR, with the finding of new sites, every year there's more. It's really interesting. It's really cool.
How did they relate to their dogs?
To their gods with a G?
No, dogs.
Or dogs with a D?
Yes.
How'd they relate to their
dogs? Just wondering. I know.
I'm gonna go with dogs. Dogs with a D?
I just wondered how they related to their dogs. Dogs with a D. Like
okay. So yeah, this is a fun one. Sometimes they ate dog.
Oh.
That's a good relationship.
Everyone freaks out on that one. But I'm not hugely knowledgeable about Maya dogs, but I know that there was like there's basically one species, maybe two, the Maya dog. But I'm sure they had them as pets, but they also ate them as well. We know they ate dogs because you find dog bones that have been wrapped and that kind of thing. But we can be a little more open-minded and think that, like, if you live on a farm, you might have a pig that's your pet too. That the pig will ultimately go to slaughter, and that's just, again, it's just part of the natural world. Again, we're so divorced from this stuff, in our culture, that we go, oh, I can't believe they ate dog, and it's like, dude, it's just another part of the natural world.
But how are we supposed to guide them through the inframundo if they've eaten them?
They don't need a dog to guide them.
Oh, okay.
They're good to go.
All right, so it happens to be the first day of summer today, right? The summer solstice.
Oh, that's true. Summer. Oh my God, yeah.
So you say you usually go to Belize in the summer. So when are you planning to go, and what are you going to be doing, you think?
I'm not going this summer. I know.
It's like the first summer, or
no, there is. I have to. It's funny, if I counted up, the first year I ever went was 1993, which is like going to be before many of you were born. Yes, children, let me tell you of the 90s. And so since 1993, I've gone almost every year. And I would say in the last 6 or 7 years, I've taken a couple years off kind of here or there. And it's because it's for a couple different reasons. One of the big ones is, research-wise, I've hit a spot where it's time to write up more of this stuff. Now, I've written it up in a scientific. Yeah, see, the other academics like, I know what you mean. I've written it up in a scientific manner. Like, so if you Google my name and come up with arcane archaeological journals, that, like, it's in there. But I'm really excited to bring this more to the general public, and there's a book or two or three that I'd really like to write and have started on, about like Maya Cenotes specifically, or archaeology in general. That's that aspect of my career I'd really like to kind of broaden out and talk more with the general public, because I find that to be a really big need. And the Maya Cenotes ain't going anywhere, and I'm sure next year something will happen again, and I'll kind of add on. It's really fun for me because I get to kind of there's always a little bit more to go in the jungle. There's always another mile to walk through the jungle. Even with LiDAR, lots of it have not been really found or uncovered. And LiDAR only tells you where the bumps are. They don't. It's great, but it doesn't tell the whole story. And just the physicality of it, of getting out into the jungle and walking, is very difficult. So my point is, the work progresses slowly. But I really like that aspect of things, so I'm always excited.
Well, what makes it so difficult about the jungle?
What's so difficult about it?
Yeah.
The much shorter list is what's not difficult, but what's difficult is it's just the overwhelming heat and humidity. Some people with like very bad asthma, they'll come to the Maya jungle for a day and they'll just turn around and buy the next flight out. Like, they just can't take. There's an oppressive heat and humidity in the jungle that is very difficult, and just walking through it. I mean, I always tell my students it's like walking through a week-old salad that you left in your fridge. You know, that's what it's like. It's just sort of wet and vaguely organic, and it's just. Every little plant forms a lattice work with every other plant, and you swing a machete and you just waddle along super slow, constantly tripping and falling too. I'm actually talking myself out of going next year just as I talk about this, but it's slow. That kind of
your clothes probably rot.
Oh
in your
God,
body.
they practically rot off your body. I mean, they just. And they will form a stench that will never go away. You know, I mean, and you'll actually find like mold growing on them. You know, like the jungle just eats away. Oh, and technology, I mean, forget it. You know, computers or phones or whatever. You know, like that stuff just dies. That's where technology goes to die. Is the jungle. You know, so it makes every step, even the most basic things, even. Man, I've been in the jungle before where it's like, oh, God, should we make a fire? Oh, you know, because it's just so much, every bit of life is so much effort. You know, maybe I'll just eat a cold tortilla and some peanut butter. But it's a fun challenge, and I really like it when my students go. To have this experience in the jungle for the first time, to see a really difficult environment, because I think that it's something that young people need a lot, that they're not getting nearly enough of in modern society, is testing of themselves, is to kind of prove their mettle. You know, there ain't no safe room here. You got to walk through the jungle, and the end is 3 miles. The truck's 3 miles over there. You better start walking. You know, and then when they do it, though, there's a huge feeling of accomplishment that's great, and I see it when my students go and come back. That feeling of accomplishment of dealing in a very difficult environment is really good for young people.
I think that my worst experience in the field, I mean, this was in a 5 or 6 week field camp. It was in Colorado. It was hot, but it was dry.
Mm-hmm.
But one week, the gnats were out, and oh my gosh! I mean, it was like oppressive gnats and horse flies, and my field partner and I were just mean to each other.
Right. It does. It like breaks down civilization's ties. You know, and you know exactly what I mean. And it doesn't have to be the jungle. The desert will work just fine for destroying all humanity. You know, you just. Like when you were in that moment with all those gnats and flies and stuff, it's like time just slows down, and you're like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to deal with this for 8 hours now, you know, and it's just
or more.
Yeah, right. And the clock just goes tick, tick, you know, and it's brutal, but it's really good, you know, for you as a person to be like, okay, look, I'm going to chill out. It's going to be 8 hours, not the end of the world. I'm just going to walk forward. I'm going to do what I need to do, and it's going to be all right, you know. So you just have to kind of get in that mindset and keep slogging through. But yeah, you can say the world's worst things to your field partners, but they ultimately understand, I think, because they do it too.
Yeah, I'll definitely.
It was character building.
It absolutely is.
I'll never forget your stories about the tick bomb and the bot fly.
Oh my God. I got a million of them. I mean,
bot fly.
Oh yeah, the jungle is famous for every single, you know, brutal insect sort of situation. I do find that people who are really scared of insects, it's so overwhelming that they actually get over it. You know, like if they're really scared of spiders or whatever, it's like if you just dump a huge box of spiders on someone, they just sort of, which is the equivalent of what happens to you in the jungle. You're just like, well, I could either go insane or I could eat my lunch, you know, and it, yeah, no, but you just, you just wipe off the spiders and you're good to go. So of course the jungle has every large insects with weight, you know, is what I like to say. We don't have anything like that in California.
So yeah, I think we're getting close to the end of our time. But yeah, I think that's really great that you know you're more interested in like taking your research and bringing it to the general public. I mean, you're definitely really great at that, because you know, I just realized I forgot to introduce myself, but you know, I'm Sarah Muliadi, and Harold Milioti is the show producer, and we both been students of Dr. Kinkella, and yeah, like I took like what was it, 3 classes from you, and it's
I
like
thought it was like all of them.
well, I didn't take archaeology because
Oh my God.
because I'm a wimp, right? I don't never went camping or anything like that. I was just like, but yeah, it was like every time we took another class, then just like more Miliotis came, right? Because you're just such a great teacher.
That's very kind. But it is something that I take seriously, and that I want to bring these things out to the general public, because these stories are intrinsically interesting. I mean, there's a reason people invite me to a show like this, is because traipsing through the jungle and swimming through cenotes is something that's kind of very romantic and interesting. And the ancient Maya in and of themselves are supremely interesting. And I do think archaeology does a bad job of not interacting with the public enough, and we should do that much more. And I think in the future we will. I think most of the sciences are like that. I don't know, Susan, I think I would guess you would sort of generally agree too. In geology.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, I think the more interactive we can be, and especially, and not just museums, but actually making them part of life.
Right.
So I'm not sure how exactly we do that. I mean, if we start having replicas of of pyramids for our homes, but like this is the more.
It's. I think it starts, I mean, even in, K through 12 schools of learning about this stuff, in the 10th grade. You don't have to wait until college to learn about the Maya, or learn about, here in California, the local Chumash, Native American culture. And it's so intrinsically interesting, and people want to know it. And we just let it kind of wither on the vine. And with geology, there's all kinds of stuff with dinosaurs, and then the great dying and all that kind of stuff. There's so many good moments in geology. And when you just say geology, people think, oh, rock's boring, but it's not. It's this really dynamic thing, and it's our fault as researchers. We need to get out there more.
It's really fascinating, and I think that I became fascinated at a young age, just because my dad was a geologist, and we would go, and he would show me. We go to different mines, or and it was fascinating to see the rocks and understand where they were coming from.
Right.
And in terms of culture, being in Oklahoma, we had different living museums that you could go in, and all kinds of culture all around. So it was like, wow, it felt like it was alive. It was still living and breathing. So it really opened my eyes, and so I was so receptive when I was a teenager to like learning more. And my first book about the Mayas was Incidents of Travel in the Yucatan and Chiapas by John Lloyd Stevens.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
Yeah,
amazing. All his pen ink drawings, and it's like I just loved it.
Yeah, that's cool. And see, for both of us here, you have on this program kind of two researchers, and I noticed that you use words like it came alive. Like that's the key, to show young people that it's not just about rocks and geology, or it's not just about dead bones and archaeology or something. That it's this like living, breathing, really multifaceted, supremely cool thing that can be very life affirming and very exciting to be a part of. So I kind of want to bring that out to the general public. Need it now more than ever.
Oh, absolutely. That's great. That's really, really great.
All right. So I'd just like to thank Andrew Kinkella for coming on again. It was really, really fun.
Oh, it's
Talk
great.
to you again.
Anytime.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you, Susan Nash, for coming on as our host. It's always just a really great show. So, yeah. So, thank you so much, and we'll see you again next week on Life Edge. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Thanks.